All right, so I think the Daily Monitor is where we will likely start from. So since we don't usually take it so much, let's start from there. It leads with a very interesting headline here. Tinubu's presidency, bad market, in quotes, won't get another term in 2027. That's credited to the PDP. Accuses the APC-led government of plunging Nigerians into economic hardship, insecurity, and hopelessness. So let's bring in our analyst, Mr. Akintobi, who is a journalist and an analyst. Mr. Akintobi, good morning and welcome to the program.
A very good morning to you and good morning to Nigeria.
So this is a statement credited to the PDP. They are saying the presidency, they've targeted bad market in their assessment. I don't know the details of what they mean. Perhaps when you look at the economy, security, the usual parameters that is used to measure each administration. In their assessment, this is bad market, and they're already predicting an end of term for President Tinubu. What do you make of it?
Well, in Nigerian colloquial parlance, bad market simply describes anything that is injurious to health, anything that is not doing well. And of course, PDP as the opposition on the back foot cannot really see anything positive about the current administration. But truth be told, there have been some gains. You talked about the economy being rebased and how the economy has grown, the GDP has grown compared to this time last year. So that's a positive. And of course, we can look at the landscape and point at a number of positives. There's a student loan program. There's the fact that we're increasing our oil production. Insecurity is being fought on all fronts. So there are some positives. I think it's quote unquote is bad belle to be calling the administration bad market, because there are some successes. That's not to say it's Uhuru yet. Clearly, there are areas that can be improved upon, and there are still so many factors that affect the quality of life of Nigerians. Inflation is still too high, the value of the naira is still too weak, unemployment is rife, insecurity pops its head up everywhere on a daily basis. Food is expensive, food items are expensive in the market. So there's still a lot of ways to go in terms of development and progress. But that's not to say it's all bad. I don't think the PDP, particularly in its current state, if the PDP is describing the Tinubu presidency as bad market, I think we should describe the PDP as on life support, and what is worse than bad market is dead market.
You came gun blazing this morning against the PDP.
I'm not even a member of the PDP, and I felt that.
That hurts, right? So this is a challenge to the PDP. Get your acts together. In fact, it's very upsetting, that we are in a place right now where not even the ADC itself is totally out of the waters. And is affecting the quality of opposition we're looking forward to having. Kayode Bukola, you have the next one.
Indeed, Mr. Akintobi, you may be getting some calls from the PDP this morning. But you talked about the basket, and you said perhaps not everything out of that basket may be bad. But listen to this one. I don't know if this is good. Import, that's the Nigerian News Direct, by the way. Import, FG to reinstate 4% free on board levy, scrap 1% CISS and 7% collection. And we heard one of the lawmakers at that hearing with the customs officials of the Customs Service yesterday saying that they must stop a 7% collection from the Nigeria Customs Service and free up revenue for the federal government to plow to other areas. But this 4% free on board levy adds more to the responsibility of importers. And of course, the importers have been speaking lately and asking for a balance between revenue collection and well-being of businesses. Is this another bad part out of the APC basket of government policy?
Administration's primary methodology for raising revenue has been taxation, which in more developed economies, truth be told, taxation is the primary means of government revenue. That's the truth. Usually, anything below the ground is private property and you pay royalties to the government. That's the structure in developed economies. That's what capitalism is all about. The factors of production are in private hands, not in government hands. But our economy is anomalous, and for that reason, the oil and all the other minerals are public property. And so focus has never really been on taxation maximally as the primary source of government revenue, because there's always been an easier free flow of money coming out from the ground. So this administration from the beginning has made it its reason for existence to restructure the way government revenue is generated. And the primary way to do that is to move it to global best practices, which is taxation. And so when you see a place like the ports, I mean, the customs service, I think, is the second or third highest revenue generator for the government, I think, after oil and gas, and I think perhaps after the FIRS. I think the customs, what it brings in from the ports, from importation of goods, is critical to the functioning of the government. So they're continually looking for ways to squeeze more money out of importation. First of all, of course, to discourage importation. Secondly, of course, to, as I've said, generate revenue for the government. But also the thing about it is that the businesses that are importing things, that have to pay all of these fees, when they say 4% free on board, basically the goods that are being transported while they are in transit, there is no outstanding payment that's due. But when they get to their port of destination, then all these taxes begin to kick in. Now, the primary major importers in Nigeria have been complaining all along that they are being overtaxed, and that is having a knock-on effect on the goods that they are importing, because they pass on the cost of the levies, the taxes, onto the end user, which makes things more expensive. And at a time when the naira versus the dollar rate is really, really low, it makes imports more expensive. And we are an import-dependent economy. Nigerians are in love with imported goods. And so imports, the ports continue to be busy every day and goods keep coming in. So the NCS and the government is trying to find a balance whereby they don't suffocate the importers and the end users, but at the same time, continue to generate decent revenue for the government. So this reinstating the 4% free on board levy, they've balanced it out by scrapping a 1% levy somewhere else, a 7% collection tax. So it's a continuous juggling act to try and find a balance that works for both the importer and the consumer versus the government needs for revenue generation. So is it a good or is it a bad thing? Well, the jury is still out on that. We will wait and see what the actual effect. See, when we're throwing out numbers, it sounds sweet. It's all theoretical. Like, look at the GDP debate saying the economy has grown by so much. But what is the actual effect? And Bukola, you spoke to that a bit earlier. What is the actual effect on the street, the man on the street, his quality of life, employment, inflation in the marketplace, a rebased economy? We are all beating our chest and crowing that the economy has grown. But in real terms, the current 70,000 minimum wage, what it can buy today, the previous 30,000 minimum wage could buy double of it. So are we better off by the fact that the minimum wage has doubled? Are we better off? So that's what I think we should focus on, is what are the substantive effects of government policy on the pocketbooks of the average Nigerian? This is theoretical. Let's see how it plays out in the coming days when the goods that are coming in begin to be impacted by this 4% free on board levy and by any other adjustments the government is trying to make.
And that is where the story is, really. And speaking of percentages, and you've talked about it earlier, Nigeria's economy expands, records 3% growth in Q1. That's the Nigerian Tribune's lead story today. So if you look at the front page, you see that story. Yes, in terms of billion dollars, it's now $243 billion. That's our economy. Yeah, a lot of people were expecting this to make us climb to maybe second of biggest economy in Africa, but sorry. Seeing the dollar is at 1.1516. This is the best we can achieve right now.
We're number 4.
We're still number 4. But Mr. Kintobi, I don't know if you were expecting the rebased figures to bump us up to, first in Africa, because we recall the last time it was done, all of a sudden we just became first, and people are like, okay, maybe this will give us bragging rights. But I think it's a very important moment of reflection for us as a nation. So we know that it's beyond the numbers in that sense, but at least 3% growth for the economy in Q1. Hey, the government will take this, right?
Absolutely, yes. The government will take it for bragging rights as an achievement, and in truth it is. It's just that when you look at the potpourri of all the elements that align to create this growth, part of the rebasing is bringing in previously ignored sectors, online sales, telecommunications, IT, things that weren't captured before, freelance workers that weren't captured before in the economy. When you bring those things in, of course, it expands the pot. So the pot of economic activity is bigger, because they've added more things that were not captured before. But 3.13% growth in Q1 compared to Q1 in 2024, it's a decent achievement. And the only reason it hasn't propelled us to number 1, like it did several years ago, is simply because of the devaluation of the Naira. In real terms, yes, the economy has grown, but it isn't bigger than the other 3 countries, South Africa, Egypt. It's not bigger than those for now, because in dollar terms, when you convert what the GDP in Naira is based on what you said, Kayode, the 1,500 Naira exchange rate, it in dollar terms brings us to 4th position. Nonetheless, I don't think we should focus so much on position per se. I think Nigeria is at a place where globally our potential is recognized, our population, we're a very big market in all of Africa. I think we're the biggest market for goods. The economy is considered to be quite stable at this point in time. We can borrow money if we need it. And of course, that borrowing issue has always been a hot potato, because people worry about the funds that are borrowed being used for the purposes intended, and not just necessarily mortgaging our youth to our youth's future. So I think it's a good thing. We shouldn't worry about the fact that it didn't leapfrog us over the other 3 countries back to number 1. I think what matters more is the fact that there is greater economic activity in Nigeria today than there was this time last year. One way or another, that will translate to benefits to Nigerians down the road.
Okay, so maybe we'll take one more, dailies, and see. Yes, I think almost literally all of them are the same thing. But let's go to the Vanguard newspaper, which is the retired policemen protesting poor pension welfare nationwide. We're going to have that expansive conversation, but we need your take. The Storm NAS, that's the National Assembly, seek exit from CPS. Protests also in Edo, Plateau, Kwara, Taraba, Cross River, as IG denies opposing exit from CPS. Mr. Akintobi.
Yeah, it's actually unconscionable that we would allow things to deteriorate to the point that our retired servicemen have to come out to the street to protest. These people went out on a daily basis and put their lives on the line for Nigeria and did their best, and now they're retired. And I think it's a sad day when they have to actually come out onto the street. I listened to the IGP yesterday, and he said they won't have to come back out again today because he has sat down and discussed with them, and they are making Why did they have to get to the point of a protest? Why? Why are we reactive as opposed to proactive in terms of the things government needs to do? Why do we wait until it gets till things grind to a halt? This issue has been on the table for ages, and the IGP cannot say he was not aware of it. The Ministry of Police Affairs can't say they weren't aware of it. The National Service Police Commission can't say they weren't aware of it. Why did they wait? Why is it that when the publicity now gets negative and people are coming out in the street and showing how destitute they are and they are fainting and they can't feed and they can't pay school fees for their children, why is it then that the IGP meets with them to now say, okay, we'll look at your plight? I'm sure these people have been making noise about it all along, and nobody listened to them. Their cries were falling on deaf ears. And you see the same thing with ASU strikes, and you wonder, why does it have to take such a disruptive action like a strike to bring the powers that be to the table to listen to our plight? And it's especially unconscionable when it is places like the police force, the people who are charged with protection of our lives and property. And you now wonder, well, can you really blame them when they are taking 50 naira on the road from commercial vehicles, when their terms and conditions of employment and retirement are so poor? I heard Jeff saying earlier that no policeman should be out there on the street earning less than 250,000. Somebody else said yesterday after this protest, I think it was Shore, that it shouldn't be any less than 500,000. Those are all just random numbers, throwaway numbers. Okay, I say it should be 2 million. Yes, I say it should be 2 million. You say 250. Somebody else say it should be 1 million or 5 million. How do we determine? The most important thing is, what does it take these people who served us and served us well with their lives? How many of them have lost their lives in the line of duty and their families are not receiving any settlement? Their children's fees are not paid. Yet they died in service of protecting us and our property. I think they should get priority. Somebody said earlier that the people they are protecting are earning more than the protectors. How, in Nigerian balance, how does that balance? How? So, yeah, so it's really a sad day. And it's not just the police. There are a group of army people from the Civil War who are still crying for their settlement, their pension, their benefits till today. From the Civil War of 1967, some veterans who fought in that war still haven't been settled. So this is a systemic problem. It's not only the police that are suffering from this, and I think it's an apathy on our part, a cultural apathy that says that once you are no longer front and center, once your issue is not directly in my face and I don't have to attend to you now, I put you to the side and I forget about you. Well, we can't forget about the people that put their lives on the line, and the people who taught us in school, the people who protected us security-wise, the people who've served us to the best of their ability. In their old age, they should be able to live a good life. And the only way to do that is to pay them their emoluments as and when due, especially those emoluments that are not even enough for them to begin with. We now don't pay when we should pay. It's sad.
Well, you know, Mr. Akintobi, you are hitting the bullseye too many times today. You just may be getting another call from the police force. But we have maybe about 2 minutes to wrap up.
I'm not afraid.
This one is from this Nigeria. We're talking about economic activity earlier on. I'm wondering whether there is enough economic activity to push the people in the Northeast out of this current predicament. Listen to this. Food insecurity in Northeast needs urgent attention, says Red Cross. A report indicates 3.7 million persons likely to be affected as foreign aid cuts may worsen the situation. Mr. Akintobi.
Yes, that situation is critical. When you look at Red Cross, Salvation Army, and all of these philanthropic agencies that deal with crises and human dislocation, they rely fully on aid, and most of that aid is foreign. And when Donald Trump rattles his saber and says he's cutting aid to Africa, and things like that, it has an effect. A spiral effect, a domino effect, down all the way down. And there have always, of course, already been problems about distribution. When aid comes in, most of it gets diverted. A good portion of it doesn't even get to the intended recipients. You remember during the COVID, we saw palliatives that were labeled as birthday gifts for legislators. So you can imagine foreign aid that includes food, blankets, various supplies, water. Most of it, a good number of it, is already caught up in corruption, diversion, all manner of shenanigans. And then when it now gets caught, it worsens the situation in such a way that we're now talking about 3.7 million people likely to be affected. These are already poor people. They're displaced people. There are people who can't fend for themselves and were totally dependent on the largesse of international donors, maybe local donors as well. And now these cuts are affecting them in a multidimensionally poor country where over 60% of the population is classified as poor. You cannot imagine that these are the poorest of the poor, because the Northeast has been plagued by insecurity, been plagued by weather, been plagued by all manner of things that have made it impossible for farmers to farm and produce food. So they are reliant on this aid, and the aid is not forthcoming. I hope we don't have a humanitarian crisis on our hands coming up. I hope not.
Yeah, Mr. Dayakintobi, well said. And thank you so much for always coming through. Dayakintobi is a journalist, always helping us to make sense of the dailies each time we call on you. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure always.